What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be talking about Sisu. Written and directed by Jalmari, Helander, this film stars people like Jorma, Tommila, Askel, Hennie, Mimosa Willamo, Jack Doolan, and many more. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to my review of Sisu, a brand new film that just came out in theaters that I was pretty bummed to see in a very empty theater. And I was looking at the rest of the screen times for the rest of the day, or the show times, and was really disappointed to see that there wasn't a lot of tickets sold at my local theater for this movie. There also wasn't an abundance of marketing for this movie. I saw the trailer a handful of times over the course of the last month and some change, and as soon as I saw the trailer, I knew I was all in. And I wanted to go see this movie today for sure, because tomorrow I'm going to see Return of the Jedi as it's coming into theaters once again for its 40th anniversary. But today we're talking about Sisu, a film that comes from some of the producers and other creatives that were part of the John Wick films. And if you've seen the trailers, then you know that similar to John Wick, it is a man against everyone else, a man against the world kind of movie. This film takes us back to 1944, and we're introduced to a man who was once part of the war himself. He's left that behind. It's near the end of World War II, and he's just kind of doing his own thing. And this is a movie that focuses on a character who has little to no dialogue the entire film. This is a movie that is 110% reliant on body language and just acting overall. A lot of facial acting that really sets the tone for this film, great sound design that really builds tension, and really great cinematography. This is also a movie that utilizes a lot of fantastic practical locations and practical sets and practical effects that make this film feel and look far more tangible than a lot of other films that come out these days. Outside of a couple of moments with some digital effects and green screen near the end of the film looks stunning, it feels real, and it feels tangible. Like I said, we're in 1944, and this individual who's no longer part of the war just found a huge amount of gold. And upon his trip to take it to the nearest bank, which is many miles away, he ends up encountering some Nazis who very quickly realize that they have messed with the wrong person. And that's pretty much the premise of this film. I won't say anything else in terms of the story here, but it is also a very simplistic narrative. A man finds gold, he wants to transport it to the bank, some Nazis pick a fight with him, and we find out that he has a very particular set of skills, and he kicks some serious ass. If you've seen things like John Wick or Taken or so many other films that have a similar premise where you have one guy at the center taking everybody out, then you know that this is a movie that requires that you suspend your disbelief and go in for a good, fun, action-filled time. And that's exactly what Sisu is. The word itself, Sisu, is actually explained at the very beginning of the film via some text that appears on screen, letting us know that it's a Finnish word that can't necessarily be translated, but that the general gist of it is an unimaginable amount of determination, a fight, a will that cannot be stopped, and essentially that it comes about when somebody has lost all things, has lost all hope. And so that's pretty much the explanation for our main character here. We do learn his name at a certain point of the film, but it doesn't really matter because this isn't a movie really about him. However, the film does a great job through small moments of performance and camera angles to give us a lot about this character without him ever having to really say or do much. You start to understand his history, you start to understand where he's come from and what's made him who he is simply through his facial expressions, simply through small gestures that he would do. And overall, this is a film that doesn't really have to say a lot, to do a lot, and to tell a lot. The most of the dialogue in this movie ends up coming from the Nazi characters, who are just, in a lot of ways, your typical Nazi villains that we have to deal with over the course of the film. But it doesn't really matter because the center is this main guy who's just a badass and gets himself in and out of any situation throughout the course of the film. Now, at times it does feel often convenient because, like I mentioned before, you have to suspend your disbelief, and our main character here could have, should have, and would have died in so many of these situations. But similar to other franchises like a John Wick, as long as you're able to suspend your disbelief and just have a good time and know that this is a badass action revenge film that takes place in the war. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this film. Visually, I was enticed. Character-wise, I was engrossed, even though there was hardly any character development and hardly any real narrative. But for what this film is and for what it wanted to be, I think it really did hit the nail on the head. This is a movie that's not trying to hit you with dialogue and trying to hit you with this big dramatic narrative, but instead is supposed to be a fun survival action film that takes place during the war with a really interesting character at the center. And I really want to praise Jorma Tommila, who plays our main character here. He brings so much depth to this character in his eyes, in his facial expressions, and in the way that he performs this action that informs you so much about who he is without him hardly having to say a single word of dialogue. Sisu is a film that's straightforward, it's simplistic, and I'm going to keep this review the same way. I've told you about it, I told you it's well made, it looks badass, and I really believe that this is a movie people need to go see in theaters. I don't necessarily know that this is going to be better than John Wick for a lot of people. I don't necessarily think it is, but for a straightforward action movie that knows what it is, I think that it really hit the nail on the head. It was a lot of fun to watch in a theater, and I was heartbroken to see that the theater I watched it in was pretty empty, with the screenings coming later in the day also being pretty empty. I highly recommend going and checking out Sisu if you're looking to find something to watch in theaters this weekend that's new, maybe something you haven't heard about, maybe something that's just a little bit different. While this movie does feel reminiscent of other films that have that man against the world kind of story, I found it to be really fun and refreshing, especially since it takes place at the tail end of World War II, giving us a different vibe when it comes to movies like this that isn't as choreographed or filled with a lot of modern day weaponry and guns that you see in a lot of films like John Wick. So a big thanks to you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the film if you go and check it out. But if you didn't enjoy it, that's cool too. I definitely want to hear down below from people who saw it and didn't see it, whatever the case may be. Leave your thoughts on Sisu down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.